For our next story, let's go back in time. The year was 2022. The Wuhan virus was spreading across the globe. The world was under lockdown and vaccinations were compulsory. At this time, an unvaccinated Novak Djokovic landed in Australia. He was going to compete in the Australian Open, but the tennis star was instead detained and finally deported. This incident sparked a lot of media frenzy, and now Djokovic has made a new claim. The former world number one believes that he was poisoned in detention. Why did he say so? Our next report tells you.
This wasn't the usual battle on the court. This was Novak Djokovic against a different opponent, the food he was served in detention. The 24-time Grand Slam winner claims he was poisoned. The story began in 2022. The COVID-19 pandemic was very much still a reality. The world was under lockdown. Vaccines were the name of the game. But Djokovic chose to remain unvaccinated. He landed in Melbourne, ready to compete in the Australian Open. But the tennis star was stopped at the airport. Australia at that time had strict rules. Any unvaccinated person could not enter the country. If they did, they needed a medical exemption. Djokovic had none. So the tennis star was held in detention. Djokovic appealed to the courts, and during this time he was kept at a park hotel in Melbourne. The hotel had long been a symbol of despair for asylum seekers. There are reports of deteriorating conditions, even that of maggot-infested meals. But Djokovic believes his diet wasn't just subpar, it was a weapon.
I realized that in that hotel in Melbourne, I was fed with some food that poisoned me. I had some discoveries when I came back to Serbia. I never told this to anybody publicly, but discoveries that I had a really high level of heavy metal. Heavy metal. I had the lead, very high level of lead and mercury.
This is what Djokovic revealed in an interview. The Serbian player has a very strict diet. It's reportedly a strict gluten and dairy-free diet. Djokovic said tests dictated a high level of heavy metal in his body, which was strange. So he believes he was poisoned. Now, the Australian Border Force hasn't responded to this, neither has the government. Djokovic was asked about this today as he's in Melbourne again for the Australian Open. He says he just wants to focus on tennis.
Do you have any evidence linking your high heavy metal blood levels to the food you were served in hotel detention 3 years ago?
Look, the GQ article came out online yesterday, and I think it's a February issue, so it's coming out in print version. I've done that interview many months ago, so I would appreciate not talking more in detail about that, as I would like to focus on the tennis and why I'm here. If you want to see what I've said and get more info on that, you can always revert to the article.
Of course, focus is important. After all, Djokovic is aiming for his 11th Australian Open win. But that doesn't change the fact that he's controversy's favourite child. In the 2020 US Open, he hit a ball that struck a line judge and he got disqualified. He didn't wear a mask at the 2021 Australia Open. During a dramatic Wimbledon final, Djokovic was fined $8,000. This was for smashing his racket. And he refused to take COVID-19 vaccines, claiming he was not anti-vax but pro-freedom. Which brings us to this episode in Melbourne. Australia refuses to speak about it. Djokovic is reluctant to expand on the issue, and all of that is just fueling the fire. As the race for the title begins in Australia, the world is interested in just one thing: what truly happened off the court in 2022.
From breaking news to the day's biggest controversies, shedding light on the world's top headlines, detailed analysis on the stories that matter the most to you. Catch it all on Spotlight at 6 p.m. India time and 12:30 GMT, only on Firstpost.